Good day everyone, Daniel Palar and I are assigned to discuss about disruptive impulse control and conduct disorder. So I will be the first one to report and Daniel for the next slides after me. So here's the topic outline. First, you have the introduction. The next is the disruptive behavior versus typical behaviors, categorizing impulse control disorders. So this is the DSM-5 way. Next, the epidemiology, diagnosis and subtypes. Then etiology and risk factors, comorbidity, assessment, and treatment. So the introduction, we have the disruptive impulse control and conduct disorder. So in here, these disorders refer to a group of disorders that include oppositional defiant disorder, conduct disorder, intermittent explosive disorder, kleptomania, and pyromania. So these disorders can cause people to behave angrily or aggressively toward people or property. They may have difficulty controlling their emotions and behavior and may break rules or laws. Next, the disruptive behaviors versus typical behaviors. So in here, in differentiating the disruptive behaviors versus typical or common behavior, so people with conduct or disruptive disorder are more extreme in terms of anger and aggressiveness. So their feelings of this are more frequent than typical behaviors and also long lasting. So with that, they are not easily get calm, and aside from their behavior occurs in different situations like unexpected situations or areas, and by that their behaviors causes problems. So in categorizing impulses control disorders, so this is in the DSM-5 way. So the DSM-5 created a new chapter. So this is the main disorder that we have, the disruptive impulse control and conduct disorder. So it brought together disorders previously classified as disorders usually first diagnosed in infancy, childhood, or adolescence, and impulse control disorders. Disorders are unified by presence of difficult, disruptive, aggressive, or antisocial behavior. So it often associated with physical or verbal injury to self, others, or objects, or with violation of the rights of others. Then behaviors can be defensive, premeditated, or impulsive. So in epidemiology of this chapter or disorder, in the prevalence part, we indicate here the disorder's prevalence because you can check it already in your DSM-5. So as you can see, the disruptive impulse control and conduct disorder is more common on males than females, and the start of the occurrence is during childhood or adolescence. The lifetime prevalence of the ODD is 8.5, the conduct disorder is 9.5%, the IED is 5.2%, and in any ICD is 24%. So let us move to the diagnosis and subtypes. So in diagnosis and subtypes, so this is from the DSM-5. So the oppositional defiant disorder, so in here you can diagnose this if you have seen difficult behavior for 6 months, negativity, defiance, disobedience, hostility directed toward authority figures. So the diagnostic criteria: A, we have a pattern of angry or irritable mood, argumentative, defiant behavior, or vindictiveness. So it lasts for 6 months as what you can see there. And under this letter A, we have angry, irritable mood. So it often loses temper. So they also often touch or easily annoyed. they are often angry or resentful. So argumentative defiant behavior, so they often argues with authority figures or for children and adolescents or maybe with adults. They often actively defies or refuses to comply with requests from authority figures or with rules, or they often deliberately annoys others. They often blames others for his or her mistakes or misbehavior. So when we say vindictiveness, it has been spiteful or vindictive at least twice within the past 6 months. The persistence and frequency of these behaviors should be used to distinguish a behavior that is within normal limits from a behavior that is symptomatic. So, yung oppositional defiant disorder, yung mga diagnostic criteria niya, so dapat ma-identify mo sa symptoms pa lang na iba talaga yung mga behaviors nila because hindi siya kagaya ng normal. So the disturbances in behavior is associated with distress in the individual or others in his or her immediate social context, or it impacts negatively on social, education, occupational, or other important areas of functioning. So those behaviors can affect the education, yung pakikisalamuha nila, or yung trabaho nila. So the behaviors do not occur exclusively during the course of a psychotic substance use, depressive, or bipolar disorder. Also, the criteria are not met for disruptive mood dysregulation disorders. So the symptoms, it can be confined in one setting. So it is in home. There are symptoms in multiple settings, may not be apparent during clinical exams. The persistence and frequency of the symptoms should exceed what is normative for an individual's age, gender, and culture. So for example, it is not unusual for preschool children to show temper tantrums on a weekly basis. So yun yung example. Hindi common sa isang bata or preschool child na magkaroon ng tantrums like almost every week. So, more prevalent in families where child care is disrupted by a succession of different caregivers. So, in families which harsh, inconsistent, or neglect child rearing practices are common. So, doon siya mas prevalent. So, in prevalence, it ranges from 1% to 11%, which an average prevalence estimate of around 3.3%. So, children with ODD are at increased risk of problems in adjustment as adults, including antisocial behavior, impulse control problems, substance abuse, anxiety, and depression. So, next we have the intermittent explosive disorder. So, in here, it is not premeditated. So, the age should be age 6 or older. So, you can see if an individual has intermittent explosive disorder if yung verbal aggression nila is 2 times weekly for 3 months. So, kunyari sa 3 months, they have 2 times every week nagkakaroon sila ng verbal aggression. So, they are aggressive verbally, or iba-iba yung mga sinasabi nila, like aggressive masyado sila sa pagsasalita. So, in behavioral outburst causing damage and or physical assault against animals or people, so in here, dapat ma-identify that they have IED if in a year, they have assaults, like not just in people but also in animals. So, dapat 3 times yun within a year. So, the intermittent explosive disorder, it is their current behavioral outburst representing a failure to control aggressive impulses. So, the magnitude of aggressiveness expressed during the recurrent outburst is grossly out of proportion to the provocation or to any precipitating psychosocial stressors. The outbursts are not premeditated and are not committed to achieve some tangible objective. The outbursts cause either marked distress in the individual or impairment in occupational or interpersonal function, or are associated with financial or legal consequences. So the chronological age is at least 6 years. So the prevalence, so 1 year prevalence in the US is about 2.7. So ang lifetime prevalence niya is 7%. So more prevalent among younger individuals and more prevalent in individuals with a high school education or less. And in here, in intermittent explosive disorder, it is more common on men because men account for 80% of the cases ng intermittent explosive disorder. Next is the conduct disorder. So it is a repetitive and persistent pattern of behavior in which the basic rights of others or major age-appropriate societal norms or rules are violated. So when we say aggression to people and animals, so this is the possible symptoms na makikita natin sa kanila. So aggression to people and animals, so they often bullies, threatens, or intimidates others. They often initiates physical fights, used a weapon that can cause serious physical harm to others, has been physically cruel to people, to animals, or confronting a victim, then force someone to have a sexual activity. So destruction of property, when we say destruction of property, has deliberately engaged in fire setting with the intention of causing serious damage, has deliberately destroyed others' properties. And when we say deceitfulness of theft, has broken into someone else's house, building, or car, often lies to obtain goods or favors or to avoid obligations sa stolen items of non-trivial value without confronting a victim. Then lastly, we have the serious violation of rules. So in here, they often stays out of night despite parental prohibition. So it begins in the age of 13 or before, parang 13 age, then has run away from home overnight at least twice while living in the parental home, or once without returning for a lengthy period. So it has often truant from school, beginning from before age. So the next last two subtypes, we have the kleptomania and the pyromania. So in kleptomania, it is the failure to resist impulses to steal, increasing sense of tension after the act, pleasure, gratification, and relief after the act of stealing. So the prevalence of this kleptomania, it occurs in only about 4% to 24% of individuals arrested of shoplifting. So not all individuals who shoplifted is diagnosed as kleptomania, or they are not all having kleptomania. So prevalence in the general population is very rare, so it's not really common unlike other disorders. And kleptomania is very rare, wherein the prevalence is only 0.3 to 0.6%. Um, the most common who can experience kleptomania, or common na merong kleptomania, is females. So they are more common than males, wherein the ratio is 3.1. So the developmental course is this disorder often begins in adolescence. So it may continue with intermittent episodes of stealing for years. So 64% to 84% have been arrested for stealing, and 15 to 23% have been incarcerated. So we chose kleptomania as our case analysis, 'di ba? Before we chose we have given a chance to choose a disorder or subtype under our given main disorder to give a case analysis. So we chose kleptomania, and in here we found, or we already know about kleptomania, wherein nakilala namin yung isang doktor na diagnose na may kleptomania, and because of this disorder, natanggalan siya ng lisensya, and natanggalan siya ng lisensya because she committed like nag-shoplift siya for how many times, and nakulong siya because of that. Next, we have the pyromania. So in pyromania, it is a deliberate and purposeful fire setting on more than one occasion. So hindi siya agad madadiagnose. So even though there are individuals who were repeated doing fire setting, so only 3.3 lang ng may symptoms ang nakuhaan ng full criteria ng pyromania. So it's not applicable to everyone na gusto ng apoy. Hindi ibig sabihin na if you like fire, you are having a pyromania disorder. So yung mga tao na may pyromania, they feel arousal, like relief after seeing a fire. Next we have the etiology and risk factors. So in here, the risk for ODD and conduct disorder, so inisa na lang namin siya. So first, we have having parent with a mood or substance abuse disorder. So sometimes the disorders that a child or an individual has starts with the parents or seeing these things that is not applicable as they grow up. So being abused or neglected. So when we say being abused or neglected, if the individual since child siya was abused or hurt, so it can affect their behavior, or they will act like how they were treated. And so doon na yung harsh or inconsistent discipline. Then lack of supervision. When we say lack of supervision, lack of guidance from the parents, so they are not supervised about what is wrong and what is right. So poor relationship with one or both parents. So if this is the case, they will find things to feel that they are belong. So hanap sila ng mga areas o mga bagay na pwede nilang bigyan ng attention. So parents with history of ADHD or conduct problems. So one of the main reason here is also bakit merong mga ganitong cases because of parang na-inherit din nila or nakuha nila sa parents nila. So financial problems and poverty. So sometimes na they tend to steal, like sa kleptomania, because of they don't have money to buy, or they have financial problems. So peer rejection, if everyone in their surroundings doesn't care about them. So exposure to violence, if they are exposed to so much violence, they can inherit or get those acts of violence that they witnessed. Next is the comorbidity. So in here, like na-mention naman sa mga previous disorders bago sa amin, the disorders has comorbidities. So in ODD, we have the ADHD, so 50% of the time. So it often precedes conduct disorder, so depression, anxiety, and substance use disorder. So in comorbidities, you can check also your you can check your DSM para mas ma-define siya, kasi dito nila i-include lang namin yung parang small details lang to para hindi masyadong lengthy yung parang ma-discuss. Then in conduct disorder, we have the ADHD, the generalized anxiety disorder, major depressive disorder. In IED, we have the mood disorder, lifetime prevalence of anxiety disorder, and personality disorders, and others. In pyromania, we have the gambling disorders, depressive and bipolar disorder, high occurrence of substance abuse disorder, and in kleptomania, we have the anxiety disorder, eating disorders, bipolar disorders, personality disorders, and other related disorders. So, in kleptomania, mas marami yung comorbidities ng kleptomania kasi mas maraming related disorders sa kanya. Next, we have the differential diagnosis for the ODD. So, in differential diagnosis, you can also check your DSM-5 kasi doon na ano siya, na parang na-connect siya ng mas concise. So, in here, we have the conduct disorder, adjustment disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, depressive and bipolar disorders, disruptive moods, dysregulation disorder, intermittent explosive disorder, intellectual developmental disorder, language disorder, social anxiety disorder. Next is in IED, we have differential diagnosis is disruptive mood or dysregulation disorder, antisocial personality disorder or borderline personality disorder, delirium, major neurocognitive disorder, and personality change due to another medical condition and aggressive type. So, substance intoxication or substance withdrawal, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, conduct disorder, oppositional defiant disorder, or autism spectrum disorder. So in conduct disorder, we have the oppositional defiant disorder, and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and depressive and bipolar disorders, intermittent explosive disorder, and the adjustment disorder. And let's move on to the pyromania and kleptomania. So the differential diagnosis for this is in pyromania, other causes of intentional fire setting, other mental disorders, and in kleptomania, ordinary theft, malingering, antisocial personality disorder, and conduct disorder, and the manic episodes, psychotic episodes, and major neurocognitive disorder. So that ends my report. So the psychotherapy, the treatments, assessments will be discussed by the next reporter. Thank you.